How to improve the 30 to 100 yard shots. I have an embarrassing confession to make. I feel more confident putting the ball closer to the hole from 130 yards out than 50 yards out. And while that might work to shoot decent scores, it's a big missed opportunity. The potential to hit close from a 50-yard shot and make that putt is way higher, bigger, stronger, likely than putting the ball closer from 130 yards, especially given the constraints of how much time we have to practice. So I've been working on this intermediate distance, this distance that is more than a little chip swing and not quite a full swing, this distance that people call the awkward distance. And I want to share some ahas that I've had in the last few weeks. But hey, if you're new, welcome to Better Golf Academy. This is where we want to help you lower your scores without changing a single thing about your golf swing. So this week we're talking about getting specific stock yardages for your personal golf game between the distances of 30 to 100 yards. And just at a high level, this could look like a number of different ways. Maybe you have just one smooth controlled swing and you control distances with different clubs. Like your lob wedge goes 60 yards, your sand wedge goes 80, and your approach goes 100. Maybe that's Hanju's system, maybe not. Maybe you do the clock system where you do a 7:30, a 9 o'clock, and a 10:30 backswing, and then you do a smooth follow through, and that's how you control your distances. Maybe you have a similar system, but you use different points of reference, like your hip height and then your shoulder height and then maybe above your shoulder height. But hey, whatever system you use today, I'm just going to talk about the clock system, the Dave Pels 3x4 system, because I think that's a good starting point. And then from there, you can branch out, tweak, and then customize it to make it your very own. Before we head outside to actually show this, two quick reasons why I love this clock system. One is that it's super objective. Like 9 o'clock is 9 o'clock, whether you're from the US, Europe, Hungary. Shout out to Hungary. Thank you guys for watching. And the second is that it could be as granular as you want it to be. Like, did you guys see Bryson DeChambeau's latest video where he's trying to break a course record? He does a 9:30 swing. Like, that's ridiculous, right? Like, for me, 7:30 to 9 is already hard to tell. And then 9 to 10:30, yes, I can tell. But like, what's the difference between a 9 and 9:30, Like, I think we're talking 3 yards or something like that for him. But hey, that's why he's a pro and I'm not. Okay, and one more caveat before we really get into the gritty. This is borderline swing tips, but I like to think of it more as a system, a process to generate certain distances rather than like move your elbow here, hinge your wrist like this. So I don't necessarily care about what your swing looks like, but there are some best practices to swing in a way that generates consistent results time after time. So let's go head outside and let's talk about this. All right, we'll hit some balls in a little bit, but before that, two things. I want to talk about setup and I want to talk about the actual movement. So in terms of setup, three things you just must do, I will say. I know that's a little strong language, but three things you must do to get these awkward distances down, and that's just from my experimentation last few weeks, best practices, aha moments. Okay, first one, the acronym is BAS. So B stands for ball position. So when you make the swing, the number one priority is consistency, because you want the same speed, you want the same loft, and you want the same direction every single time, right? That's what's going to cause the ball to go the same distance and the same direction every single time, right? So ball position is key for that, because on your swing, you have the lowest point of your golf swing, the lowest swing of the arc, they call it. You want that point to be the same every single time. Now for a professional, that might be very realistic, but for me at least, I can't hit the bottom of the swing every single time in the same spot. So what I like to do, I know best practice is to put the ball in the middle of the stance. Okay, so let's say the very bottom of the arc of my swing is smack dab in the middle of my heels right here. Let's say it's like right there. I like to place the ball 1 inch back of that. And what that does is it gives me a little bit more forgiveness, such that if I'm coming down and it's the bottom point of my swing is a little bit further ahead, yes, I might get it a little thin, but I'm still coming on my downswing. It's gonna compress the ball even more, put more spin on it. Even though it flies lower, it would probably check up faster. So that's the case where I'm like missing to the front. But if I'm coming back and for whatever reason, the club is lagging a little bit behind, and what would normally be a chunk, it'll actually hit the ball, it might be a little chunky, but I'll still be coming down and we'll still have momentum to carry the ball forward. And if it doesn't have any spin, that's okay. Like, I want it to roll out a little bit more. The short way of saying this is that by putting the ball an inch back, it just allows for more forgiveness, more misses, and the ball to still go up close to the hole. After experimenting, I found that for me, putting the ball an inch behind center works the best, provides the most consistent results. I know some people say just make the shaft straight. Some people say put it in the middle of your heels. I like 1 inch behind. So I grew up with an open stance for these awkward distance shots. And the theory there is that because the stance is open, the body is more easily likely to turn over and you're able to complete the swing. But lately I found that a parallel stance is actually more consistent, because with a parallel stance, I can always take it back on the same line and bring it forward on the same line. If my body's open, then I kind of have this feeling that like I got to go out to in, and that's kind of weird. And then sometimes I try to compensate and go like inside to out, and that kind of introduces this wrist hinge, which introduces inconsistency. So because we are going after consistency, both in the angle and the path and the direction of the club face, I found that a parallel stance, railroad tracks to your target, is the most consistent. And then lastly is soft arms, which this one came to me as a surprise, because I always grew up for the last 20 plus years just getting used to address like the arms being straight out. And that's valid for a full shot where you're trying to like hit it really hard and swing really far, and you're trying to create like this lag, this like rubber band mechanism phenomenon thing. But I found that with soft arms, and this kind of transitions us to the movement part of this, with soft arms it's easier to do 2 things, which is key to this shot. One is to keep your arms connected to your body. If you got your arms out here, it's kind of like that rocket ship analogy, where if you're off 1 inch, then out here you'll be off a lot. Whereas if you're closer, you've got less variance. And it is a little counterintuitive, because soft arms, you think like pool noodle and you think like, oh, more variance. But it's not like pool noodle soft, it's just soft enough to where it's kind of like your dampening system for your car, like your shocks. Body is like the body of the car moving, and then these arms kind of adjust micro movements. They're kind of like your shocks. They absorb like the big impacts, and then you're able to work as a system to eventually hit the ball close to the hole. So soft arms allows for less variability, and then it also allows for you to maintain that feel, because if you're like out here, it's hard to feel. I mean, if you're doing a full swing, like that's what you want. But if you're doing these like soft finesse shots, you want like some feel into your game, you know what I'm saying? Okay, so there are tons of videos on like the mechanics of the swing, but I'm just gonna touch on the most important thing that I've learned for myself, which is that this is a full body swing. And what I mean by that is the motion, the driver, the engine that propels this movement is your body. It's like fully on your body, full body, right? There is no arms, there is no wrists, there's no hands. It's just like your hands are just an extension of your body for this shot. The butt of the club is always facing my torso. So when I take it back, this is a 9 o'clock shot for me. So when I take it back to 9 o'clock right here, this should be parallel to the ground, and you'll see my body is facing the club, right? Then when I come back at impact, I'm square, follow through, the butt is still pointing to my torso throughout the whole motion. So it's literally a body swing. Arms are just there for the ride. Okay, so like I mentioned, this is to that blue flag over there, it's a 48 yard shot, slightly downhill. My 9 o'clock lob wedge I have in my hand goes right around 43 plus or minus, right? So like 38 to 50. So if I hit these consistent shots, it should land right before the flag, and then on a real green, obviously roll up and go in the hole, of course. So here I am, ball position slightly 1 inch back. Shaft is a little bit leaned, just ever so slightly. Parallel alignment, soft arms, and it's a full body swing. Swing with the full body. Oh, that's way short. About 10 yards short. First swing of the day. First swing of the day. Do a few more here. Just notice soft arms and swinging with the whole body. That one was a little thin, but it got there, it checked up, right by the flag. Another thin one, a little to the right. Still close to the flag. Well, that one's way more lofted, but right to the flag. So it's been a few weeks of practice, but you can see, like, I've never had this consistency, this confidence from, let's just call it 50 yards out. That one's a little chunky, right there by the flag. So that's what I mean by an inch behind the bottom of the arc. Makes it so that it's just ever so forgiving. Oh, that one's a little long. Yeah, that one was like flew 52. Soft arms. Swing with the body. Nice and easy. That one hit a branch. All right, we'll do a couple more. But yeah, the ability to perform a shot under pressure with these big muscles, it just makes me feel way more confident. That's another thin one. But maybe in a real course, it would roll up to the flag, maybe check up. As I'm hitting these shots, I forgot one more thing. So this is a swing thought or a setup thought that I have, which is you want the weight 60 to 70% on your left foot. And again, that will just promote the bottom of the arc going ever so slightly in front of the ball to promote more forgiveness. And watch how I swing with my whole body. Like, my arms move very little relative to my body, or they should at least. Another thin one, but that'll get close. All right, let's head inside and talk about practicing these shots. I am so pumped about these 50-yard shots now. Did you guys listen to episode 19, Stop Wasting Strokes? In that one, Hanju comes to a point where it's like, so how do you find the right place to practice? Well, I don't know. So in this section, I hope to give some pointers that will just nudge you in a direction. Maybe it's not the right one, but will just nudge you to start moving. And then you'll figure it out as you go along. So the way I started figuring out this 30 to 100 awkward distance is by the shorter shots. The 7:30 swings, the 9 o'clock swings. I'm so fortunate, privileged to have this backyard that could go up to 60 yards where I can just practice like the 7:39. There are some trees in the way, which is where the Garmin R10 unit comes in handy. Thank you so much, brother-in-law, for letting me steal that from you. He let me borrow it, but I'm like stealing it from him. So with my backyard, I was able to do some really good damage from 30 to 60 yards, just hitting ball after ball without having to necessarily, get in my car, drive somewhere, fight for a spot. So I'm super fortunate. Don't get hung up on the fact that you don't have a green to watch the ball roll, because when you're on the course, every single green rolls differently anyways. So all you really want to measure is the point from where you hit to the point where it lands. You want that distance to be spot on. If you had a budget of up to $1,000, my recommendation would be to get a mat, get a net, and get something like an R10, a Mevo. Choose your TrackMan technology here, your little, whatever it's called, ball scope thing. Get that and just hit balls all day into the net. Practice your 7:30, 9 o'clock, 10:30. Get those distances down. And while you may not be able to see the full flight of your ball, the beauty of that is that you'll get so many repetitions in that you won't have this bias of like, oh, my 9 o'clock should go 60 yards. You're just going to do 9 o'clock, finish out, 9 o'clock, finish out. And then looking at your data, you'll find the convergence of the average distance. And sure, if you're a geek like us, you'll get like the short ones and long ones. And that way you'll have some sort of dispersion chart in your head of like, okay, this lob wedge, 9 o'clock, averages 43, but it could also go 32 and it could go 60. So, use that data to your advantage, right? So whether you get a net or use this backyard technology, first, before you do anything, just get tons of reps in. 7:30, boom, mark that distance. 9 o'clock, boom, mark that distance. Get those stock positions. That's where the Dave Pell's 3x4 system comes in. You got 3 arm positions and you got 4 wedges, ideally, right? Pitching wedge, approach or gap wedge, sand wedge, and then lob wedge. Now, if your budget is in the $200 to $500 kind of dollar range, what I would recommend is getting one of those Bushnell Callaway flight distance checker thingies. And whether you take it to a pitching area at your nearest golf course or the driving range, do the same things, do the 7:30, 9 o'clock, 10:30, look at where your balls are landing, and then laser out like what you think is the average. Now, the beauty of this is that you'll know, again, right, your stock yardages for the different positions. It is going to be more work than having like a Garmin R10 or your Mevo or your whatever there, right? With a Garmin, it's so nice. You can just download the CSV and then do an average, right? But this is a great second option. Go to a pitching area, mark out your distances and then laser it out, see what your average yardages are. From my experience, most golf courses top out at like that 50-yard range, and then that's where this next suggestion comes in, which is you just can't get around going to the range, buying range balls, and then it even hurts for me to say, spend those range balls practicing the 50 to 100 yards, just that 9 o'clock, 10:30 positions. I know it's going to be painful. 3 days ago, I spent $15 on a large bucket and I hit all of them under 100 yards. It was painful on the wallet, but then I came out of it with full confidence that, a 10:30 sand wedge goes X and a 10:30 pitching wedge goes 93 yards. Like, I know that in my head now. I'm so confident about that. I look forward to the next 100-yard shots to where I can just do a 10:30 pitching wedge swing. And then if your budget is $0.99, no shame in that. You got to use the old school walking technology. 1 step is 1 yard. So pace out, the different distances, maybe ideally 30, 40, 50, all the way to 100. Maybe you do every 20 yards, 60, 40, 60, 80, 100. And then just put some stakes out there, put some shovels out there, get a flag stick. I don't know, just do whatever, right? Mark it with a tree. And then just same thing, right? It's going to be the same approach. Just get used to the yardages of that 7:30, 9 o'clock, 10:30 swings with your 4 wedges. And then you got your system there. You got your stock yardages. And then one tip that Dave Pell's does, which I haven't committed to just yet, is putting a label on the shaft of each wedge and writing down the 3 distances. I am going to do that at some point. I'm just not convinced yet what my 3 distances are. I got to collect more data. Typical, data analyst paralysis. But I will do that, and I would recommend you to do that as well. Think of it like this. If you spend $1,000 on that R10, the range mat, the net, and maybe some golf balls, and each time you go out, it's $15 for a large bucket. 15 into 1,000 is like 66.6667. If you go out to your backyard or wherever garage and use that thing 67 times, you'll break even, right? 2 final notes as you move from this video to the practice range to the practice green. 2 things. 1, even though this thing has potential to be so dialed in and objective, right? 7:30, 9 o'clock is 9 o'clock. You got to find what works for you. For Padraig Harrington, he has, the different half swing, 3/4 swings, but to him, it all looks the same. It just feels different. Like, that works for him. Sometimes he controls yardages by lofting the club up. Sometimes he controls it by moving the ball up in his stance, back in his stance. Like, that works for him because he's an ex-pro, maybe still pro. He's practicing a lot. Like, those movements are ingrained in his body. Like, that works for him. For Bryson, he's doing 9:30 instead of 9. Like, I don't have the fine-tuned muscle technology to do that, right? I don't have enough time to practice to do that. Like, that's awesome that he could do it. I wish I had time and energy to do that. I don't, right? That works for him. For me personally, like that 730 backswing feels a little robotic. It doesn't feel quite long enough to where I can get a nice tempo. And so that's a big question mark for me. I don't know if I'm going to keep using that. Although it is repeatable, I don't know. I'm still fine tuning it, right? Even with a Dave Pell's 3x4 system, for example, like my 3x4 grid isn't as linear as Dave Pell's is, right? Like his yardages between the 730 to 9 and 9 to 1030, like those gaps are exactly equal for each club for him. Not only that, like his pitching wedge to approach wedge to sand wedge to lob wedge, like those gaps are all super linear. That's not the way it worked for me. Like for me, the two distances up front had bigger gaps. Like for example, my 730 lob wedge I think went like 30-ish yards, and then 9 o'clock went 43, and then 1030 went 55, right? So there's like a big jump and then a small jump for every, I mean, at least that was consistent. So I think that's got to be in the way that I'm swinging my body. But again, you just gotta find what works for you. And on that note, for finding what works for you, my strong recommendation is to at least start out with just one swing. Just keep it simple. We don't need those like high lofted shots and, you know, landing the ball like 3 feet from the pin and checking it up. Like, that's cool that the PGA pros can do that. Yes, it looks cool. In terms of being practical though, like, are you really gonna go out and spend 30 minutes trying to get this shot to check up? Or are you gonna spend 30 minutes locking down your 9 o'clock swing? I mean, one looks cool in front of your buddies, the other one helps you shoot lower scores and take their money. Chances are, you probably don't need to narrow down your distances to like a 3-yard gap or even a 5 to 6 yard gap, right? Like, if you have a 40-yard shot and a 50-yard shot, more often than not, that's good enough, right? Just knowing you're not going in the water or you're not being so short that you're gonna potentially mess with a bunker, right? If you're putting within 10 to 15 feet, in my book, that's a win. In my book, the name of this thing is simplicity and consistency. You just want to know for a 47-yard shot, it's a 9 o'clock full body release and it's gonna be right there. But yeah, I hope this video gave you a super concrete plan to attack this awkward distance. Hopefully you feel way more confident if you're stuck behind a tree on a par 4 that you can lay it up to 50 yards and get that crap up and down. Hopefully you feel like you don't have to go for par 5s and 2 to, you know, secure a birdie, which, you know, often leads to hitting your second shot. Well, to me, a second shot out of bounds, and then I'm like trying to get up and down for bogey. So I hope that you feel super confident in laying up on those par 5s, leaving 50 yards and getting it up and down, because that's what I'm doing now, right? Let's go attack. If this was helpful, would you mind sharing it with a teammate, a son or daughter, a loved one, somebody who's trying to lock down this 30 to 100 yard range? And if you want more golf content to help you lower your score without changing a thing about your swing, would you consider hitting the subscribe button below? Make it a great day, be awesome, bye for now.